Couperin, François Couperin. This is the Treizieme Concert. We're going to look at the first movement. I've given you a link to an online edition in the video description. I'm playing from a printed edition here, edited by Jean-Louis Charbonnier. There are a number of editions around. We're going to look at the top part. It's full of interesting symbols which you need to know about. Little wiggly caterpillar across the top of several notes, like the first note in the second bar. It's a trill. It needs to start on the upper note, so the note above the note that's printed, and it needs to trill down. There's quite a lot of commas. In this case, they are just phrasing marks, showing you where the end of a phrase, time to take a breath, and where the new phrase starts. A couple of others that we'll get to along the way because they're slightly further through. So, fingering thing at the beginning. If we start in first position, we're going to hop our first finger across over here, which is a bit of a shame. So I'm going to set my fingering up in that first bar. 1, 3 on the G, and 2 on the B natural. So by the time we get to the semiquavers, here, I don't know how well the camera picks this up, but I can hear every single note I've played still resonating on. I can hear a whole G major chord. Because every single note is on a different string, and I've left my left-hand fingers down all the way through. And I think that's a really critical feature of the opening of this. So that is the fingering. 1, 3, 2, and leave them all down. Here we go then. Counting, I'll just give you 1 and 1. Should we stop there a second? We reached the first little comma for the end of the first phrase. The other thing that I didn't say and should have done is that the semiquavers are going to be inégal, so slightly unequal. And people get very hung up about inégal. They want to know how much should it be unequal by. People know that you shouldn't be dotted, so it's less than that, and it probably shouldn't be tripletized. Sort of goes somewhere in between the two. I think of inégal, I think I've said this in another video, but I think it's worth saying again. I think of inégal as just playing to the natural shape of the bow. So we spend a lot of time working out where we want to put a forward bow and where we want to have a back bow, because we realise that the two different bow directions that we have are not equal, that the forward bow is naturally much stronger and that the back bow is naturally much weaker. And I think if you reckon to think about inégal as just trying not to correct that natural inequality that comes from a bow that is shaped like ours and a bow hold of underhand bowing, we have a really natural inequality built into our bow stroke. So all inégal is doing, rather than thinking about it as manufacturing a long short or a strong weak, just think of it as playing into the natural inequality that's here. So we're just not going to correct the fact that one of our bow strokes is likely to come out just slightly more prominently than the other. And it should just be terribly relaxed and terribly laid back and really not something to worry about. So we're going to approach our inégal with that kind of hat on. Let's go again from the top. And 1. So all of those trills starting on the upper note, the end of the first bar, you're already playing the C, aren't you? So sound it again to get the trill. And the next bar, the end of the next bar, you're already playing the G. Sound it again to start the trill on the upper note. We're going to make the first quavers nice and short, so we get the maximum effect of that resonance. We're going to enjoy the more legato semiquavers and the natural inegality that comes from our bow. Here we go. And 1. Shall we stop there? So I'm looking in bar 3. Trill, starting on the upper notes. And it starts, I should have said this earlier, the trill starts with the upper note on the beat. So what you hear is not an anticipation of this and then the printed note coming on the beat. You hear that upper note strongly before you trill. So the printed note is actually going to come late, isn't it? And the note that you're adding, the note that you're starting on, is going to come on the beat. And what happens if you look in bar 3, where the trill on the B natural, the part underneath it is playing a G. So it's a major third. By adding your C to start the trill, you're introducing, just fleetingly, a dissonance at the beginning of what would have been a major third. You've introduced that, which then gets resolved and decorated by your trill. If you put the upper note, the appoggiatura, early, and then all you hear on the beat is what you would have heard anyway, you miss the effect of creating the dissonance and the decorated resolution. Does that make sense? So you're aiming, instead of that, you're actually aiming for and that is the point of a trill. It's got a harmonic function before the decorated resolution. And I think if you can start to think of your trills in that way, it makes them sound slightly less as though you've stuck them on because somebody's drawn you a wiggly line and says wiggle your finger here. If you can find a really convincing reason to put your trill in that particular place, it makes it much easier for them to become a sort of natural part of the piece rather than something that just gets tacked on top of your melody. Should we do it from bar 3 after the first quaver? So we're starting on the second quaver of the bar. And 1. And we'll stop there again. Now, there's a couple of other things to think about in here. In bar 4, the previous time I played it, I went for an open string at the top. I quite like that because just like we had at the beginning, everything on different strings, if you play an open string in bar 4, get lots of D major chord resonating quite nicely. If it's risky that your top string is just going to shout out, then maybe put a 4 on it instead. But if you can handle that top string without it shouting, I think it's a nice feature to have those on open strings. Sorry about the trill at the beginning of bar 4, that's a 4th finger. Tough, there's no other way around it. Use the 3 at the end of bar 3, the 3 that's on the F sharp, to just kind of guide your 4th finger into place. So your 4 isn't going down completely out of nowhere, it's going guided by this finger here onto the string next door. You don't need a really long trill, it's a weak note, it's an end of phrase, just a little one, and we'll go for the open strings. Open string again. But let's make this a 4. And this a 4, so that is just slightly tidier. That's the D to the F sharp. Resound the F sharp for the cadential trill at the end. This is bar 3. Bar 3 from the second quaver. And 1. Stop there a second. I'm looking at bar 7. So that's just another trill. Starting with the G on the beat. And the same here, we're going for that same effect. Dissonance on the beat. And it can fall right away to that G in bar 8. Then I played this with a 4, thinking it was belonging to this line. Resound the B, resound the G, and this looks like a little grace note slurred into the D sharp. It is a little grace note slurred into the D sharp. When these notes come between melodic notes that fall by a third, so in that bar 9, we have F sharp to D sharp, and that E comes between that falling third. It comes not on the beat, it comes in between the beat. So bar 9 starts with a G on the beat at the top of the trill, and the D sharp comes where it should, and the E gets just tucked in before it. It's not a weighted, harmonically interfering note, whereas the G that starts the trill has harmonic intent. The E is just a passing thing that gets caught off the beat. Does that make sense? We're going to see a few more of those a bit later. This is bar 7 from the second quaver of the bar, bar 7, and 1. Does that make sense? Is that starting, I'm hoping it's starting to help integrate the ornamentation into the line. We're not going to learn the line first and then stick the ornaments on afterwards, and we're not going to think of the ornaments as an intrusion on top of what it would be quite easy to play it without, and these are just fiddly and they get in the way. That's not true. They're an absolutely integral part of the line, and if you can be sure what the function of each one is, they'll stop being an interfering annoyance and they'll start to become something really beautiful, and you'll start to really miss them when they're not there. This is bar 7 once more. And 1. Sorry, I made the rhythm up there in bar 9. I fingered that. 1 on the B, 2 on the C sharp, so that I could reach the D sharp with a 4. If you don't do it, and you put the D sharp back here, you have to slur across to the B. It's possible. It's much less elegant. It's much more awkward, I think, to put that slur across here. And then you've run out of fingers for the trill that follows. So if you start bar 9, start on the dotted B with a first finger, and then reach your second for the C sharp. It's not a long way, D sharp to B. Bar across, and start this trill on the upper note on the G. And let's hear plenty of G before we start the trill. Let's get the most of that harmonic impact. So we're going to go from, we're just going to go from bar 7 again, actually. 7 and 1. We're going to correct the bowing here and start forward. Let's stop there a minute. So I'm looking at bar 10. I corrected the bowing after the comma. It was a pity to be backwards there. 4th finger trill. Never mind. Let's have this the right way round as well. And now you're going to repeat the G to start the trill, but you're also going to bar your first finger across to the D after it. That's at the start of bar 12. Shall we go from bar 10 after the comma? Bar 10 and 1. That's complicated, isn't it? It's not actually difficult, there's just a lot of information in there. This is bar 12. After the comma, these 4 are slurred, then there's a trill, and you resound the B to start that trill. Does that make sense? And I think you've got to be careful of having a standard length for your upper appoggiatura on a trill, and a standard speed, and a standard number of wiggles, so every trill you do sounds the same. Risky. Let's make them different. So this is bar 12. Let's go for plenty of trilling in there. But this, let's make the most of the upper notes. And a very small and very weak trill, because it's the end of a phrase. You've got to get on finding this. There isn't ages to hang about and enjoy a really elaborate trill. So we'll feature the upper note in 13, and we'll just get the trill over and done with and make it quite weak at the start of the bar. We're going to go from bar 11 after the first quaver trill, so starting on top E. And 1. Let's stop there a second. So in bar 12, having sorted this, we're the right way round with the bow, won't we, for the next bit? I would correct this one. Then we've got a whole series of these falling coulées, where the little tiny printed grace note comes between the beats. But then the trill starts on the upper note on the first beat of the bar. Let's play that from bar 13 after the first quaver. And 1. Oh, must use a 4 there. You can't hide a tiny little grace note by crossing the string on it. I'm in bar 15. Got to be a 4th finger for that little D. 4th finger doing a trill. Lots to think about right at the end. Penultimate bar. Caterpillar at the beginning, so ordinary trill, fine. I think I play this with a 4. So we're on adjacent strings. And now we need to resound the F sharp. It comes on the beat. Again, it's got a harmonic function. It's going to clash against the E in the bass part. And you're going to resolve it by that, the symbol with a line through it is a mordant, a lower mordant. So the G that the mordant is on is going to wiggle downwards just once, but you are coming at it from the printed F sharp. So you get the dissonance on the downbeat, you get the decoration of the mordant, and then a trill starting on the upper note to finish off. So that last little bit, the penultimate bar, slowly, that is what's happening on the beat. Where should we go from? We're going to go from 14, when that sequence starts, and 1. It's lovely stuff, isn't it? It's really very elegant. And I think all the ornaments in this kind of thing are just, if you think of beautiful calligraphy, and every so often there's just an extra little curl on the end of a letter, or an extra little flick with the pen at the end to make it particularly perfect, particularly beautiful. That's what's going on with the ornamentation in here. Should we play it through? I know it says Vivement. There's quite a lot to think about, so we'll take a steady interpretation of Vivement for now. We might go quicker in a bit. Here we go, from top. And 1. How did it go? I'm going to leave you to it, and I am going to play you the other part. So the difficulty of having gone through the top part is that you start and I can't hear you. So I'm going to play the first 2 notes of your part with you, and then I'm going to peel off and play part 2 and leave you on the top. It means I'm going to play your first 2 notes, and then I'm going to play them again, because they start the second part off as well. Don't let it put you off. Just keep going. Here we go. And 1. Just before we try that a bit quicker, a quick word about the bottom part. If you're going to learn the bottom part, everything in there is stuff that we've already looked at, except that in the penultimate bar, there's a symbol we haven't seen before. So you get a trill on this C, but it's also got a turn at the end. And if we put that on the C string, you're going to have to nip across to the G to slur in this tiny little turn at the end. It's really not. It just doesn't work down there. So you're going to have to put it up here. Start the trill with your 4th finger on the top fret of the G string. And then you can put the turn there. So if you play an open E string before it, you've at least got a little bit of time to move. You're heading for the top fret, and then you're home and dry. Just thought I'd better mention that in the penultimate bar. Shall we do it a bit quicker then? And we're going to go for this speed. I'll do the same again. I'll play the first 2 notes with you, and then I'll play my own parts. Here we go. And 1.